So you've met my boss on paper, Dean Carvalho, but let me introduce you to my real practical boss. And this is not the dean. There's no title that can adequately describe the work, the initiative that our lead, GTA, has taken to put on this workshop. So Lynn Funkhauser is here. Please stand up. Helped to put this together. She really did the lion's share of the work. She's a PhD candidate in the Department of Anthropology. Let's give her a round of applause. It's been an incredible amount of work. I think, instead of lead GTA, I sometimes think of her as the grand poobah of this thing, or maybe even better, the herder of cats, because it really is kind of like that. And you saw this morning, with all of you coming in, it really does take someone with great organizational skills, great personality, to get everybody going and get us into this place right now, this moment. So Lynn, thank you very much. I'd also like to introduce you to some graduate school folks who are here today. And remember, we are resources for you, and I can't underscore that enough. We are here as resources for you. So, starting in the back of the room, who's not even paying attention to me, is Leslie Campbell. Not listening. There she is, in the back. Leslie's great. She's our Director of Recruitment. Some of you may have already met her or been in email contact with her. We have my right-hand person, Stan Pickering. I don't think he is in the room right now. We have Amanda Maltby here with us as well. Stan and Amanda are out floating around trying to help with other things. And we also have a couple of our student employees here at the workshop. I'd like to mention Caitlin Beard and, of course, Ross D'Entremont, who was here. We'll be back a little bit later. We couldn't do this without this team, this crack team of people. And I'd also like at this moment to take the opportunity to thank the Provost's office for supporting this workshop. So they put this on, they support us every year, and they are happy to give us the resources to get you moving into the new semester. Also today, when you registered, you'll notice that the capstone men and women were at the registration table, and I'd like to publicly thank them for all the work they did this morning. Which reminds me too, registration. You have a registration form in your packet. It's within the first few pages before you get to the Thursday tab. Fill that in. We need that to track your attendance today. We'll have one tomorrow with the Friday tab. Pass them to the end of the aisle or just hang on and give them to one of us. That's fine. We will have proper name tags for those of you who end up with stickers this morning. We have proper name tags for you tomorrow. Those of you who have a printed name tag, you'll see on the back, there's a name on there. That's the name of a room, and that is where you will be doing your teaching presentation tomorrow. For some of you, and I'll get into this a little bit more later, you will be over in Hotel Capstone just across the sidewalk, and we'll explain all of that a little bit later. So what I want to do is just give you a little lay of the land of what to expect over the next couple of days. So again, if you don't have a name tag, please see one of us and we'll get that going for you. We need to keep track of all the attendees. Make sure you bring your binder and your name tags back with you tomorrow. We need that as well. There's all sorts of information in your binder, and I will talk a little bit about the agenda in just a moment. Your name tag is literally your meal ticket. So we have lunch today, we have lunch tomorrow, we have breakfast tomorrow. You got to have your name tag. All right, so keep that with you. Don't lose it. We really need that. Lunch today is going to be in the back. It's going to start sharply at 12 o'clock. It's kind of a grab and go. We have vegetarian options. We have gluten-free options, just FYI, to help accommodate as many dietary restrictions and issues that we can. Restrooms, you go out these doors. There are some on either side. Those of you who are interested in recycling, there are recycling places. I'm big on that, so I have to mention it. They're not easy to see, but they're kind of on the sides against the back wall there as well. For parking, if you didn't receive a parking pass, come and see one of us and we will get a parking pass to you. Keep it on your dashboard, all right? Because this is a thing provided by the graduate school for you to be able to park here. The Wi-Fi you saw up here is, asterisk, star, 2017, champs with a capital C, exclamation mark at the end. It'll float through the screen here. All right, so let me talk about today, and let me give you an idea of what's coming up. So this morning is, I will say, I think the most intensive part of the workshop. You're going to cover some really serious issues. All right, we're going to start with legal issues, and I'll get to that in a moment. We cover things that You know, back in my day as a GTA, we didn't talk about things like active shooter or threat assessment. We even didn't talk about distressed students, and we should be doing that. We should have been doing that for a long time. So you're going to be hitting some very hard, complicated topics to start off the workshop. If you need to get up, take a quick little break, please do so. This morning is just action-packed. The rest of the workshop flows a little bit differently, so I just want to give you a heads up on that. We have lunch, as I said, at 12 o'clock. Right before lunch, we have Adam Brooks speaking on effective presentations. He's a lot of fun, and he will take us into lunch. Tomorrow, we have a continental breakfast. It starts at 8 o'clock, and we will have members of the grad school staff here to answer a variety of kinds of questions for you. Like graduate student health insurance, all sorts of things with the registrar. So come on in. It's a super casual environment. Just come on in, get your breakfast, sit down. We just have a lot of fun, and then things get going at 9 o'clock. So keep that in mind. You can ask questions and things. And then the real focus of Friday, of course, are the presentations. 3 minutes. 3 minutes, that's it. We can all do something for 3 minutes. That's what I tell my students all the time. We can do anything for 3 minutes, right? So it's 3 minutes tomorrow. You're going to be videoed, and then you'll get feedback. I know some of you are really nervous about this. Please don't be. When we get feedback from the workshop, every year students say, I was really nervous about that, and it was really awesome and very valuable. Please keep that in. So just know that's what our focus is tomorrow. And let me see now. And then a few days after the workshop, sometime hopefully next week, you will be receiving a feedback survey about the workshop. So please let us know. We read every single one of these, and we want to know what you think. That said, let me tell you one other thing we're doing this year. In the back far corner of the room over there, we have, please, it's a silly name, we're calling them the Ask It baskets. But if you have a question, something comes up in any presentation, or you just have a wild thought about something or a wild question, write it down. If you have a piece of paper, do it. We have index cards in the back, and throw it in the Ask It basket. The other thing that we're going to do is Lynn and I are going to work together this coming academic year. It's a new initiative supported by the graduate school and the provost's office to offer continuous support through the academic year for you. And so once a month, we're still working out the logistics, but once a month we will hold a session. It might be something with legal issues. You come with some issues that have come up, we just keep it open for an hour. Or it might be Title IX and your classroom. Or it might be just getting you together to talk about conflict resolution in the classroom. Different topics. If you think of something over the next 2 days that you would like to see addressed in a 1-hour session through the semester, you think it's a good idea, please write it on an index card or a piece of paper and put it in the Ask It basket that's back there. I think I called it Future Ideas, something like that. But anything you think, or for the workshop, things you like, things you want us to think about, to add. It's already action-packed, but we can and we do want to accommodate new ideas. All right, so keep that in mind as we move through. Information on the workshop, the agenda, all these sorts of things are online. We will be posting videos of all the sessions as soon as we get them all done. The other thing I want to mention to you, I might be the only person in the world who just absolutely loves these academic planners, but we have some for you. We have several hundred of them. So they are in the back corner sitting on the table. If we run out, we've got still more boxes of them. We just put a few out. But they are calendars, right, with all the dates of, when spring break is, when fall break is, when exam week is, all of these sorts of things. I like these things, and they're there in the back if you would like one. Let me remind you, too, as we move forward into the day, please turn off your cell phones. I don't want to hear any notifications that have that whistle. It drives me crazy. So turn those off. If anybody still uses pagers or beepers, turn those off too, please. We really want to have a distraction-free environment as we go on the workshop. If you're using a laptop to take notes, that's great, but please try to refrain from checking emails and surfing the web and doing some other things, because we do have a lot of content that we want to cover, and we want to make sure that you're on top of all the subject matter. And so, keeping in mind, we have lunch at 12 today. Let's begin with our content, and I will introduce my colleague and my friend, Norma Lemley from the Office of Counsel. She and I have worked together for many years on a number of different issues. She's here to get us going on really important, crucial, fundamental things that you need to know on policies and legal issues for GTAs. So let the workshop begin, and if you have any questions, please let us know, and let's welcome Norma Lemley.
Thank you. If you'll just give me a minute, let's get these PowerPoint up. We're going to be starting on page 27, and actually while I'm doing this, if you'll flip to page 59, you'll see a Did I do it? All right. Use the mic more. Okay. All right. I wanted you to flip to page 59 because that's an important policies chart. I'm not going to cover that in detail. I'm going to cover a lot of that through slides, but I wanted you to look at it and see that it really is packed with information about important policies that you're going to need to know about, but I've put it in one kind of 2 or 3 page document. There's a couple right at the end we won't have time to talk about. One of them is the dangerous weapons policy. Just know that students cannot have weapons on campus. You have to check them into UAPD, and employees, and that would be faculty and staff, have a different rule. They can have them in their car, but that's about the only time you'll hear about it unless the UAPD talk about it. So another one is the drug-free workplace policy. We've had issues before, not with GTAs actually, but with we have a drug-free, alcohol-free workplace, so that means you can't bring your booze to work. You have to bring your own device, but not bring your own booze. And we had an issue once with a faculty member thinking, well, it was after 5, I guess I'll let all my grad students bring their coolers of beer in and we'll just have class with beer, and that person's no longer here. So I just wanted to tell you about that one. We're not going to discuss it, but it's kind of common sense, but our business hours go until the last class taught. So a reminder of the rules. Well, I am Norma Lemley. We're going to flip back and start with the actual PowerPoint slides on page 28. But I am so happy to be here. I tell you, it's energizing for me to look out here. My passion is in higher education law. When I heard there was 32 years, I sat there and I went, I think it was 1998 when I started doing this, this training session. I've been at the university for 29 years, and you go, aren't you tired of your job? I tell you, when I look out here, that this is why I do it. I love teaching you really smart people some legal things that could get you in trouble because you don't have time to learn all that. So please do your best to pay attention. We are going to fly through this. I always have a time problem, but Lynn's going to help me with that. I am trying to teach you in 2 roles. You are a student and you're an employee. So as a student, I want you to know about these things. So if you experience any problems here, you know where to go. As an employee, you are our agent. So that means you can create legal exposure for us. We would then have to come in and defend you or help resolve the problem. So I need to train you as an employee so I can make sure you don't stumble into these areas. Also, I just want you, at the end of this workshop, I do have the most detailed slides, I will admit. It's not what you're supposed to do, but I need you to have a resource so that you can spot an issue just from having listened today. Know that there is a contact person or an office that you can go to, and just really spot that issue. And so the detailed slides and the handouts are there for you to have a resource for later. By the way, before we get started, you may want to know if a lawsuit was brought based on something that I did in my classroom, would you defend me? And my answer is yes, as long as you're acting within the scope of your employment. So our office has 5 attorneys. We've hired our newest one is our litigator. If something were to happen and you were named in a case, or the university was named but it was based on your actions, you are covered under our self-insurance policy as long as you're acting within the scope of your employment. So we'll talk about a few instances where you could lose it, but I hope that makes you feel comfortable. Yeah, okay, as long as I just follow kind of what the policies say, we're going to be good to go. I need to get my clicker here. Okay, these are the policies we're going to cover. About the first part of this presentation is going to be on this harassment, sexual misconduct, pregnant student-related policies. And that's just a really detailed outline of what we're going to cover. Then we're going to spend the last half flying through accommodating religious beliefs, accommodations for students with disabilities, confidentiality of student records. What are you going to do when parents are asking you about students? And then real briefly, alerting you to a handout on ethics. So state ethics code says that you can't use your position for personal gain as a state employee. So if I don't get to it, there's a nice 4-page handout. We give it to all the new faculty just to kind of give you some 20 or so tips of don't do this, don't do that, so that you don't violate that ethics law. And the big thing about the ethics law is that it is a criminal law. And we can't come in and defend you if it's an ethics violation. So if we don't get to that section, please read that handout that I've provided for you. All right. One thing I wanted to, we're going to talk about some sensitive issues, as Kathy indicated, and sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, those kinds of things. And those are sensitive issues. In a room this size, someone has experienced, and more than one has experienced in a room this size. So I'm asking you today to just, as we hear this, we'll watch a little video clip, if it works. I forgot to check that. And I'm just asking you to please be respectful of the fact that people in this room are likely to have experienced some of the things we're going to talk about, and that could be a painful experience for them. The things that I'm talking about just may provoke a negative reaction from them. So if you're in the room and that occurs, I want you to follow up and go see our Title IX office, or more importantly, our Women and Gender Resource Center, who has victim advocates, counselors, a wonderful staff over there to provide some assistance. And my materials have contact information for that. I tend to just go straight into it. I don't tell jokes. I'm just matter-of-fact Norma. We get through the legal issues. So I hope that's not offensive to anyone. We're just going to talk very matter-of-fact about the issues. Because I need to make sure, as I indicated earlier, as an employee, you're not exposing us, and as a student, you know your rights. So please be respectful of individuals who may have suffered some of the things that we're going to talk about. All right. Another reason why I want you to listen today is because there are consequences of you not listening and not following. I've had two legal issues in my 29 years here that were caused by GTAs who failed to attend the GTA training session. If they had just been here, they would have been able to avoid that. So we definitely want to avoid lawsuits, which is one of the bullet points on here, but we want to avoid criminal prosecution. Some of the violations, the ethics codes, could lead to criminal prosecution. Reputational damage for the university. You could lose your employment and the GTA benefit that you have. Their code of conduct sanctions up to and including expulsion. We could have an investigation by a federal agency, and these are just some of them: Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, Department of Justice, the Department of Education's Office of Chief Privacy Office. That's the one that regulates our confidentiality of student records. The university could lose all of its federal financial assistance. That would be one of the worst outcomes. You could face civil litigation, and my examples are all the laws that I need to know about. You don't need to know those, but I've already pointed out that we provide a defense to you as long as you're acting in the scope of it, of your duties and not blatantly violating our policy. One example of where you could violate that and lose your coverage would be, we're going to talk about a consensual relationship policy. And if you violate that policy and have a consensual relationship with one of your students, you're the one with authority. Your students have no authority in this situation. You think it's consensual. Later, a year later, the student comes to the Title IX office and says, I was in this relationship, but I felt pressured. I needed a good grade. I needed the reference, whatever. I didn't feel comfortable because of that power differential. We're not going to provide you a defense in that situation. Why? You were acting outside the scope of your employment, and you blatantly violated a policy. So that's just an example, and unfortunately has occurred, and we've had to have faculty members who didn't hear that message have to pay for their own legal defense, and that we're talking $500,000 in legal fees to go through a trial like that. So if I'm boring, please pay attention to me, because I don't want you to have to experience that. There's incredible cost and disruption of litigation beyond the monetary, and obviously the damages. So with that, now hopefully I've got your attention. Let's plow through some substantive law, okay? So the university has an equal opportunity, non-discrimination, affirmative action policy statement. We're required as a federal contractor to have that. We prohibit discrimination on all of these protected bases: race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy, age, disability, protected veteran status, and any other legally protected status in our admissions process and in our employment. Okay, so that's our statement. That's our non-discrimination. We also have an anti-retaliation policy. If you bring forth a complaint about somebody harassing you, violating, discriminating on any of these protected bases, the law requires, and our policy is very clear, you cannot be retaliated against because you brought that complaint, even if ultimately we find that there wasn't a harassment violation. You're protected from just bringing it to our attention so that we know and can look into it and investigate and determine. It might be one off-color joke, and that may not rise to a level of a violation of the policy, but we need to know about it so we can go and talk to whoever did that and do some education and corrective kind of counseling so that we kind of nip it in the bud so it doesn't ever get to a severe and pervasive environment. So it's really, really critical that you bring it to our attention. A lot of people are afraid of doing that because they're afraid of what might happen, and I'm telling you, the law and our policy protects you. The number one charge in the United States since 2009 has not been race, gender, disability, age discrimination. It's retaliation. The number one charge. We take it very seriously. So just know that you can bring anything to our attention and you will not be retaliated against. We have an affirmative action program that invites people to tell us whether you have a disability or whether you're a protected veteran, and we do that because we have to report that back to the federal government. And we also provide reasonable accommodations to individuals with disabilities. So that's our overall statement. We have an incredible resource on our website called UACT. This is the full name of it, but on your handouts on page 56 is one chart that I would like you to just remember. I walked into an administrator's office recently and it was pinned on the bulletin board, and I was like, yay, high five, great job. This chart will tell you if you're experiencing this problem, whether it's hazing or discrimination, or you're a pregnant student and you need to go get accommodation. If you have a behavioral threat assessment, it's a one-stop shop, a one-page, two-sided resource for you that's on the web in case you lose your notebook to tell you if this is happening, here's who you contact. We're not going to go through all that chart today. I want you to know how critical it is. If it's ever updated, it's updated on the website. So you could type in UACT at the UA website and you'd find it first hit. You'd go to the website and then it'd say a chart, and then you click on the chart. But that's a very, very important document for you to have, not only for yourself, but remember, you are closer to these students than our offices will ever be. We're the central administration and we're kind of intimidating to an 18-year-old. You guys are right there in the trenches with them. You're the ones who are likely to get them to tell you something that's going on. That's the chart you need to be able to hand to them. Make sure they know about it. It will really, really help us. So it has a lot of information, and that's really the point of this slide. So let's move to the next one. We have a law in the state of Alabama since the Penn State matter that many of you are aware of that makes higher campus or off campus. It is a mandatory report to UAPD 348-5454. You have to report it. If you don't, you're in violation of the law, and you can be charged with a felony. I mean, not a felony. I'm sorry, a misdemeanor, and 6 months in jail or up to $500. So, good news is the statute in Alabama says, you know what? You're protected against retaliation. And guess what? If somebody tries to sue you because you reported and it didn't turn out to be child abuse or neglect, you're absolutely immune from that lawsuit. So you're protected all the way around. Some people come to me and say, well, does this situation fit? And I said, I'm not the judge of that. If you have any inkling that there might be child abuse or neglect, you contact UAPD 348-5454. Let them decide whether it meets it or not. You're protected from a lawsuit, and you're protected from retaliation. So very, very important mandatory reporting statute. We also, as we're talking about minors, a couple years in 2017, we decided that, we have a lot of kids on campus who are here every day of the week. I think Marcy Huey is our compliance director over summer camps. I think, 100,000 kids on this campus under the age of 17 every year. We decided we needed to start registering those events. So if you are working on a project where you're going to bring minors to campus, there's a registration process. We're going to be background checking everybody who's working with those kids. You're going to learn some policies and procedures. You all have to go through all the mandatory training for the youth and child protection. Let's see, it does not apply for 17-year-olds in your class. Obviously, that's already approved. It's these extracurricular kinds of activities. But if you're planning on doing that, you need to give them about 8 weeks advance notice to start that registration process, because it takes that much time to get all the pieces in place. Make sure you're properly insured, make sure all the right people are on the staff, don't have a background that causes concern to us. That's the point of that. All right, we're going to start talking about our student code of conduct and how important it is for you to know it as an employee. So if you're dealing with a student who needs to know about this because they're a victim, you can direct them to the right place, or you as a student have experienced issues, you know how to file a complaint and what's going to happen. I give you the website to the code. I know it's a long document, so you're unlikely to read it, so I'm going to try and summarize it. It does cover on-campus and off-campus activity, okay? So it's not just something a student does on campus. We have jurisdiction if a student violates our code off-campus. Our policy, our code of conduct says that if you violate any of these listed policies or any university policy, I just list the ones that are the most problematic, then you're subject to discipline. Our sexual misconduct, which we're going to talk about, hazing, harassment, child protection, we just talked about, the drug-free campus and workplace policy, I mentioned that earlier, dangerous weapons and firearm policy, I mentioned that earlier, and then OIT policies. You're in the dorm and residential life and you're downloading a bunch of copyrighted materials and sharing it and, violating, the inventor's or the author's rights. You can get in serious trouble for that. Also, and I don't think it's on my slides, but there are provisions in the code of conduct that say if you're disrupting the educational process, that's a violation of the student code of conduct. So if you have a disruptive student in your class who is not allowing you to get your material out, and you've warned them and you've had discussions with them afterwards, and they continue, you've got a code of conduct charge, and you think that's so harsh, but sometimes that may be the best avenue to get them into some counseling center, some other treatment. We're not so much a punitive as much as an educational. We're not a criminal justice system. We're a system that tries to help the students learn to maneuver this new environment. They're at a young age. Yes, there are some things that they can do that could get them expelled and suspended, but disruption in class is something we can deal with. And if you need to have to go the code of conduct route, know that that's another provision in there that could help you. The process is that any member of the university community can file a complaint against a student for misconduct. Non-UA members with direct knowledge or information can participate as witnesses. If you bring a complaint, they have an online complaint form now, but you can also prepare one in writing and send it over to the Office of Student Conduct. The director there is Todd Borst. We have a lot of investigators in that office. We don't have a strict statute of limitations, but obviously the longer somebody waits, the less likely we're going to be able to do something about it, because you lose the ability to give good, clear, clean, uncontradicted evidence the longer you wait. So the big message here from the whole day is act promptly. You can't sit on it. If you know a child abuse or neglect, you've got to act promptly. These other things that I'm going to talk about, you've got to act promptly. Same thing here. We encourage students to just go ahead and if they have a problem, or if you've got a problem with the student, go ahead and bring it to the attention of that office. They would like it preferably 30 calendar days. I'm saying that's too long. That's too long. Act promptly. If we have stalking or domestic violence or dating violence or sexual assault, there's no statute of limitations on that at all. Obviously, the sooner we know about it, the quicker we can take some action to stop that behavior. The student code also has some provisions about harassment of a non-sexual nature, threatening behaviors, and bullying. This gets real detailed, but basically you're directing some conduct towards someone based on their race, color, religion, national origin, age, disability, all those protected statuses we talked about. It's got to be sufficiently severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it would interfere with a reasonable person's ability to participate in or obtain the benefits of one of our activities. Also, the code says any attempt to intentionally and repeatedly make contact with a person over their stated objection, that's going to be a stalking charge. An act that invades the privacy of another, let's say you're videotaping two people without letting them know, and they had a reasonable expectation of privacy. Many years ago at another school, there was a roommate taped, I think it was out of New Jersey, a roommate taped his roommate having sex with another friend, and it was publicized all over the internet, and that young student committed suicide as a result. That's a very serious charge that you can face, and he did face murder charges after that. Threatening behaviors, written, oral, or physical conduct that creates reasonable expectation of injury to health or safety of a person or damage to any property. And then bullying or cyberbullying, that can get someone in trouble with the code of conduct. We also have a hazing policy, so that's any action, inaction, situation, created, or communication that recklessly or unintentionally harms or threatens the mental or physical health or safety of a person, or any act that removes property for purposes of initiation, admission into, or affiliation with the group. These are your big band, cases out of Florida State with the band hazing. You can have it in the Greek system. You could have it in any of your clubs. We need to let everybody know that is a violation of policy. It is a violation if you know about it and you don't report it. Sexual misconduct. Back in 2011, the Department of Education put a whole new emphasis on this. So this, in my 20 years of training, this has now become the hot topic. But sexual misconduct is going to include your stalking, domestic violence, dating violence, rape, statutory rape, sexual contact. You can read the slide. It's all those things. Any sexual acts that occur without the victim's consent, or that occur when a victim is not in a state that enables them to give consent. So some examples of non-consensual sexual exploitation: you cause incapacitation of someone else for sexual purposes, you're electronically recording, photographing, or transmitting sexual sounds or images of another person, you're allowing a third party to observe sexual acts, you're engaging in voyeurism, you're knowingly transmitting a sexually transmitted disease or infection or HIV to another individual. So those are listed in the code, and I wanted to bring those to your attention. Sexual assault and rape is defined in our sexual misconduct policy. It's any form of sexual penetration or attempted sexual penetration without consent. We give a definition of coercion. There's sexual contact and fondling and sexual touching. All those are defined, and I've just given you a short description of what those are. The big issue in most of these cases is, was there consent? So it's very important that you know so that you can help a student who's coming to you and so that you know for your own benefit. Under our policy, consent is a clear willingness to participate in the sexual act. And that's clear communication through either words or actions. And we recommend verbal words. It's the initiator of the sex. It's the initiator's responsibility to obtain the partner's consent. The fact that they consented previously is not clear consent to future sexual acts. It can be withdrawn, and lack of resistance does not mean you've consented. There is no consent if you're incapacitated. Doesn't mean that you had a drink. It means you're incapacitated because of alcohol, drugs, or prescription medications. Our Title IX officers are fantastic. We have a great staff. They have a very difficult job because it's their job to determine whether or not there was consent. And they're going to look at a totality of circumstances. And I just list some of those things that they will consider. But if you're unconscious, asleep, ill, or in a state of shock, you cannot have given consent. If you're mentally or physically impaired, you're not able to give consent. And in the state of Alabama, if you're under the age of 16, you cannot give consent. So this is the part I did not check to see whether it worked. This is a little YouTube video that hopefully is going to work for us. That gives you just a
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they go, oh my God, I would love a cup of tea. Thank you. Then you know they want a cup of tea.
Sorry.
If you say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you can make them a cup of tea, or not, but be aware that they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important bit, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you're entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say, no thank you, then don't make them tea at all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea. Don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, yes, please, that's kind of you. And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind, and you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they are unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea, and they can't answer the question, do you want tea? Because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea, and they said yes, but in the time it took you to boil the kettle or brew the tea and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down, make sure the unconscious person is safe, and this is the important part again, don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they'd finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they are safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it, going, but you wanted tea last week. Or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat, going, but you wanted tea last night. If you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you are able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex. If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea.
I'm so
You
sorry,
say,
y'all.
hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they go, oh my God, I would love a cup of tea.
Okay, y'all got the point. So sorry. Okay, there we go. And now I need to get back to where I was. Okay. Okay, thank you. Y'all can tell I'm one of the older ones in the crowd. All right. All right. Great video. Important point about consent. I want to go real quickly because I can tell I'm running low on time here. What to do if a student confides in you regarding a Title IX violation. they're telling you that they've experienced this, they want to miss class because of it, you're not getting information from the Title IX office, you're getting it straight from them. What are you going to do? You are, under our policy, what we call, and under the law, a responsible reporting official, RRO, responsible reporting official. You are a mandatory reporter. So you're going to need to tell them, hey, I'm a mandatory reporter. Even if you want to keep this confidential, I can't keep this confidential. I have to go tell the Title IX office, okay? You can tell them, and this would be very helpful, if you tell them, look, you can pursue criminal action, you can call UAPD. That's one route. A second route, and you can do all three of these, is to contact the Women and Gender Resource Center, because that's a safe place where you can go to have a totally confidential conversation. Our office will never know about it. Title IX will not know about it. If you just want to go get help with how to deal with it, you don't want to prosecute or you don't know, go to the Women and Gender Resource Center. They've got to understand that is the confidential place that they can go and get resources. We have incredible staff there to be able to help, trained victim advocates, incredible resource. So make sure that they know about that. And then they need to know that you're going to have to contact the Title IX office. Why? Because you're a Title IX, you're a mandatory reporter, okay? So you just really don't have a choice in the matter. Now, you all are students. That does not mean that as a student, in your student capacity, your friend is telling you this. This means you're in that weird position of you're a dual role. It's when you're an employee. So if someone's telling you because you're a GTA, it's one of your students, or somebody who's holding you out as being someone who has authority, then that's when you're the mandatory reporter. It's not your roommate telling you who's not in your class or in any of your responsibility. But please help us avoid, we are in huge trouble with the Department of Education and facing Title IX lawsuits if you get information and you do not move fast and get it to our Title IX office. And I mean the day of. We're not waiting a day or a week. We're talking immediately. You finish your class, whatever, and you make that contact. Other information you should know, you are not required to report incidences communicated as part of your routine academic experience. So you ask them to write a paper on something, they write this gut-wrenching ordeal that you really had no idea that you were going to be reading this. That is not a reportable offense unless the student clearly states they want a report made. So research projects, application essays, awareness events, we'll have several awareness events during the school year. Those, and people will tell their stories. Those are not mandatory reports, and that's because the regulations say so, okay? You want to remind the student that reports to the Women and Gender Resource Center, and I want to tell you some others that you could also send them to, but the experts on this topic is the Women and Gender Resource Center, but you could send them to the Counseling Center. They could go to the Student Health Center, Psychology Clinic, our Autism Spectrum Disorders Clinic on campus, and the UA Law School has some law clinics to help with restraining orders and things like that that would be free to our students. So those are confidential places that they could go. I don't want you to be the counselor, though, on all this. Your job is only to get them to the Title IX office. Believe me, they will cover all of this. And if they don't want to go to the Title IX office, get them to the Women and Gender Resource Center or tell them about it. It's their choice. You cannot force them to do anything. It is the complainant, or we call them, we don't like to use the word victim perpetrator, we use complainant and respondent. It's the complainant's choice as to how they want to handle this. We do try and keep that information as private as possible, but if this is the third time that we are hearing about that respondent, then our Title IX coordinator will make a decision. I know, complainant, that you don't want me to move forward, but this is the third time. I have a duty to keep the rest of the campus safe, and so we're going to have to move forward whether you want us to or not. That is rare, but if it comes up, and again, our Title IX coordinator is telling the student about that. Things that happened off campus a long time ago, still report to the Title IX office if they're telling you in the official capacity. There's no time limits in our sexual misconduct policy. The Title IX office will decide, do we have jurisdiction or not? And even if there's no jurisdiction, we're still going to be able to help the student with accommodations, because even though the respondent might be someone totally not associated with our campus, so we really can't do anything to the respondent, there are things that we have that we can help the student because that experience has impacted their student experience. So it's very, very important that we get them to the right resources. Otherwise, they're wasting a lot of tuition money and time because they're not able to think clearly because we haven't provided those resources. So you are a critical part of that knowledge for our students. Again, you don't conduct investigations, and there is some training, we call it Bridges now, training for faculty, staff, and graduate school employees. I think it's assigned to you, and so you want to make sure that you take that training. You may also get contacted by and get an email from the Title IX office saying, hey, Susie was out of your class on Tuesday because she was in our office. You go, what do I do with this? Well, follow what the Title IX coordinator said. If they're asking you to excuse them from class, you don't, one, presume that they're a complainant. You don't presume they're a respondent. They could have just been a witness. You don't know, and you don't ask questions about it at all. If you're concerned about, is this an authentic, real email, call the Title IX office, and they'll tell you whether or not they sent it. That's about all you. So just pay attention if you get one of those. Don't let that go into your junk box. Another big issue is making sure that our students who are pregnant, and that may mean some of you in this room, understand that you have some rights, and you as a teacher need to understand that you can't penalize a pregnant student. So Title IX is the statute that also protects students who are pregnant or have had false pregnancies, termination of pregnancies, gone through childbirth, or recovering. So we can't say, oh, sorry, it's a PE class, you're pregnant, you can't be in there. Or, oh, I got a chemistry lab, ooh, there's some dangerous materials in here that might harm your baby. I'm not going to let you in the lab. That is not your choice. They have the right to be in that lab. You can't require a doctor's certification that they're fit to be there unless we did it for everybody else. We've got to provide the same services to a pregnant student as other students with temporary disabilities. And if you're feeling harassed or know of harassment based on pregnancy, then report that promptly, immediately to the Title IX office. Some accommodations that you need to provide pregnant students is they may have to have their tests rescheduled. You have to excuse their absences. Even if your policy on your syllabus is, 5 absences and then you drop a letter grade, if those 5 absences for the pregnant student are due to pregnancy or pregnancy-related condition, those don't count. You can't reduce a student's grade because they missed because they were pregnant. You have to give the student a reasonable opportunity to earn back the credit missed due to the pregnancy and provide alternatives to make up missed work. Really critical stuff. We have some FAQs online if you want some more information. The main point here is go to the Title IX office. Send any student who you know is pregnant who needs some accommodations to the Title IX office. What's happening now, because we're getting the word out, is they're going ahead and going, they know that they're pregnant, and now they're going ahead and kind of working with the Title IX office to set up. And Title IX office then reaches out in advance to the teachers and says, okay, you're going to have a pregnant student in your class, and I want to remind you what the rules are. That's very helpful for us to avoid any liability. Huge, hot topic. It can be a huge legal exposure if you get that wrong. We've talked about sexual misconduct, the student code of conduct, pregnant students. We also have a harassment policy that deals with the non-gender based, and it also includes, it just existed at the university longer than the sexual misconduct policy. But it has a non-tolerance statement, defines what harassment is, requires you to promptly report it. It identifies, if you go to the UACT chart, it tells you who our designated harassment resource persons are for each college. That's the way we want you to report non-gender-based harassment, is go to your designated harassment resource person. So there's a whole list of them online. They change over time. That's why we don't name them in your handout, but that's the website. And just like in the sexual misconduct, we're in every other policy, we're assuring confidentiality to the extent that we can, and non-retaliation. It does, our harassment policy covers all protected statuses, so we've kind of covered those in our equal opportunity program. Some examples would be sexually explicit statements, sexually suggestive comments, jokes, innuendos, unwanted touching or sexual advances, displaying sexually graphic materials, Offers for or demands for sexual activity in exchange for perceived benefits. You can't say, hey, you sleep with me, I'll give you a good grade. That's just a big no-no. Public lewdness. Gender harassment would be unfair treatment directed toward an individual or group because of their sex or gender. Written, verbal, or electronic statements that disparage a person based on their perceived gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, or you just don't let them in your program based on that. Other types, the list goes on. I think you all understand what harassment is. Word of caution on social media. As a GTA, you're used to, in your student role, having all your friends on all your, I'm too old to list them all, your social media avenues. We've had issues in the past where GTAs have invited students to participate in that social media life of theirs. And it's created problems when you are putting information up on there that is, well, in one particular case, very sexually explicit, and it wasn't quite illegal. It didn't meet the definition of obscenity, but it was sexually harassing if you put it on the class board every day, or chalkboard every day. So this slide is mainly me kind of being a mama here and just saying, look, you're like me. You are an at-will employee. I can be fired for a good reason, bad reason, or no reason at all. I have no tenure here. I've been 29 years. You do the right thing, you're fine. But you could lose your job if you're pushing the envelope with what you do on social media and you're inviting your students to participate in it. The university has just released a diversity video, and at the end of that diversity video, and I'm sure it'll be circulated and you'll get a chance to see it, but they talk